Here we go. Hello, everyone. It is me, Nina Sachs from Yoga Awakening Africa, and today we are chatting with Tarryn from Yoga SA, Yoga South Africa. Tarryn, how's it going?
Hi, I'm so excited. Thanks so much for having me. When Yoga South Africa did a podcast years ago, I was on the interviewing end. I don't think I've ever been in a discussion where I'm the other one. And this is a very nice space to be in. It's not as, it feels like I'm a lot more relaxed. I'm just here for a chat. So
Oh,
this is
fantastic.
quite
Well, that's
lovely.
exactly what it's all about. I mean, and that's what others have said, kind of like post-chat when we've done these interviews. They're like, oh, Nina, it was so relaxing. It was so much fun. You're like, it was just a chat. It wasn't really like an interview as put out. So where I'd like to like literally go straight or kind of like with you, Tarryn, is like, how did you get into yoga and how did your journey through yoga take you to creating this beautiful platform that you have, which is Yoga SA?
Yeah, every year I take a step back and I go, how did we get here? How did I end up here? And it's quite a beautiful little journey. So my background is actually as an occupational therapist. I don't know if you knew that, but I studied occupational therapy at the University of Pretoria. So when I was sort of in my studies, I want to say around third year or so, I started practicing yoga just at the local Virgin Active. And I was so lucky, had the most incredible teacher there. And that was my first experience of yoga. And I think anyone who eventually becomes a yoga teacher goes back to their first class and go, wow, something obviously clicked in that
There was
moment.
magic there.
Call it magic, call it what, yeah, it was magic for sure. So I really started to dive a bit more into the practice and started practicing regularly. And at that point, hadn't really thought about doing a teacher training of sorts. This was about 2014, 2015. So even in Pretoria then, yoga was probably not very new, but there wasn't a ton of offerings that I think we see now, even just 7, 8 years later.
Well,
So
we'll get into the number of offerings that are available now compared to like 2014, 15, or kind of when I did it in 2003, like, literally where there were two or three. But we'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, so carry on with your story.
It's just grown so much, and to be on sort of this back end watching it grow, it's been amazing because I can't even remember a time where I would have said I can't find yoga offerings. How, there's so many now. So I while I was actually practicing, I was going with a friend of mine and we were starting to look for events to go to where there would be some outdoor yoga classes. And I always had to find that I spend so much time on my phone searching like yoga Pretoria, yoga classes Pretoria, yoga retreat Pretoria. And so I ended up Googling like that for ages and I could never just find a lot of stuff. Surprisingly, I found a lot more in Cape Town, which I think we see now as well. So that was when I decided to start this Instagram page, Yoga South Africa, and not really knowing where it would go. It really started with the intention of building a community. I think for myself as a new practitioner, looking for other people who I could connect with or share things that were happening. And that's what the page essentially did for, I think, probably its first 2 to 3 years, was just reposting what was happening in Cape Town, Durban, connecting with teachers. And that's essentially where Yoga South Africa started. I then went on to complete my 200-hour teacher training in Pretoria, and from there moved to Cape Town, and then only decided to, take this Yoga South Africa thing a little bit further and turn it into the website it is today. So how I got here, I don't know. I think every step was such a small little one thing at a time that now when I look back, it's this really amazing platform that's almost in a way taken on a life of its own. I always feel like I'm just here and just going with the direction that it takes me. But once I was able to put the energy into creating a website that was a space to put all the information up, it really started to boom from there, because it's just a tangible platform. And actually, quite interestingly, when I first moved to Cape Town, your website was one of the first ones I came across, because you also had a directory of sorts and there was a lot of offerings on there. And so your website was one of the first ones I saw when I first moved to Cape Town. And I thought, oh, this is amazing. This is so cool to have a space where we can showcase what's on offer, and makes it easy for people to find offerings, which was one of the goals, because I was in that boat trying to look and have everything in one place, but also on the other side, a space where teachers can put their offerings out there. So kind of seeing it from both sides. And so, yeah, I mean, I think since then, yoga's pretty much taken over a lot of my life, but I love it. And it's been a really awesome journey since then.
Love it. I think our journeys are very, very similar. And I think kind of like one thing that stands out from when you were chatting or telling us your story is this idea of connection, and kind of like community building. I think that's a big thing. It's kind of, you know, when I got into yoga, and it sounds like the same as with you, you kind of like all of a sudden you're in a different world. It's like you're out of like what society back then thought was normal, and you've like delved into this new little world, and now all of a sudden you're wanting to find like other people who you can relate with on a similar level. And I just think that's such a big part of like society nowadays. I think everyone really is looking for more, for deeper connections, more meaningful conversations, and to hang out with like-minded people. And I love your story with kind of like the YogaSA, you know, on the phone looking for, you know, yoga events, can't find anything. Back when I started Yoga Awakening Africa in 2008. And I mean, I'll share with you my little story now. We're kind of like this, not that Yoga Awakening Africa is coming to an end, but kind of like what I'm doing, my project that I'm doing is separate. And this is kind of like the close, because this idea of like connection to me is so important. And being in that position, that space where you have easy platforms that you can search for the right information, one is absolutely amazing. So I like take my hat off to you for doing that, because back in like 2010 when I was trying to do that and trying to get people in, and kind of like you're trying to navigate this online platform, and I'm like, so this is really like past like internet and website building. It was way past my like skill level. That's not for me. And so it's really good to see kind of like how you manage to take that on board and actually filter it into something that is still working, and is really, really amazing. And I love how the kind of like the beauty of yoga makes us want to help everyone else connect and come together.
I know. I totally get you on the tech side. I think when people ask me now, you know, what do you know, you would meet people, they go, what do you do for a living, or what do you do? And I always find it difficult to say, because I think as yoga teachers, we wear so many hats. It goes, yes, I work in yoga, but a lot of the work I do is actually, you know, website design and, you know, marketing and social media. And that's really not my background, but we are in a way thrown into the deep end. We have to learn how to navigate it. So we have so many jobs, and I was really fortunate to have worked with an amazing website designer, Claire Keat, and she helped me and really transformed the game for me to be empowered in managing the website, because that was something that I had to learn from scratch, and it's really, really hard. So it's amazing how I want to say that things aligned. And I do think that when you're sort of on a certain path, or when you are going down a certain route, when things line up and things just seem to flow, then it's always reassurance that you're heading in the right direction. And I feel that sort of happened with Yoga South Africa, as I got the chance to connect with really, really incredible teachers and students and, you know, holistic professionals that all shaped the way in which it evolved. So it was really community driven, which is quite interesting. So people would, you know, send me an email and say, I'm looking for this. And after a while, I would say, that's quite interesting. If I'm getting a lot of requests like that, it must be something that we need to look a bit further into. So it's always been shaped by what people were looking for, which I think has helped it along the way. So there is so much in the yoga world to explore. So it's just naturally grown as the yoga community has, essentially.
Yeah. And that's so and that's so true, kind of like what you're saying, with like this community has grown, and we do need to hear and listen, like what are people wanting, what are they asking for, you know, like where are they going, and how can I be of help, how can I be of service? And that's kind of like also where, in a sense, like with yoga, we talk about like the selfless service. Like we're not saying that this is the structure and this is how everything works. It's kind of like, okay, what are people asking for or telling me? And we're kind of helping and molding ourselves to be of the kind of like the most service to what is needed out there. there was something you had just touched on that I wanted to mention, to pick up on, and I can't think of it, so I might interrupt in a moment when it comes back to me.
That's fine. It's actually, you've got to like make notes as we go, because there's so many good points that come up, which is quite exciting. I think it's what you're saying then in terms of just how we can be of service to others. I always think of how I'm going to say yoga teacher, but I guess I'm referring to any sort of health and wellness professional of sorts. I personally believe that each teacher and individual is so unique that there is always some offering for someone. And that's what makes it quite tricky when we see how much is an offer in the yoga community, be it retreats. You might go into Yoga South Africa and see that there's 4 retreats happening in the same weekend in Cape Town. And you think, how is there enough for 4 retreats just on that weekend? But there's always something unique in every single offering on our website that really makes it quite exciting, because I'm a firm believer that if someone's looking for something, it's out there. You just need to find it. And a lot of things have to line up. It's the same thing when there's a teacher training, or even just looking for a teacher to go to classes with. You have to maybe try a couple of classes and a couple of teachers until you find the right fit, and then it's really like a match made in heaven. So
who do you resonate with, what is working, and kind of like, and then it just clicks in place. I love that. So kind of like the bigger goals of kind of like Yoga SA, was that to bring the community together? Is there anything else that underlies it? Were there any other challenges that you saw was kind of like out there in the community that you felt needed to be addressed from maybe searchers and the teachers?
Yeah, I think the original sort of model of Yoga South Africa was always to be essentially a promotional platform that would be a directory, firstly, for yoga teachers, yoga studios, holistic professionals, retreat venues, NGOs. So just pretty much a profile. And we, for myself as an occupational therapist, we would list ourselves on a lot of different medical directories, and that's how people would find you. And although we had a few in South Africa at that time, I never found that there was a significant, I think Yoga South Africa has like 200 or 250 teachers, which I don't think is nearly as many as there are in South Africa, but at least that, that's over 6 years that it's managed to accumulate to that number. So it was always going to be a directory and then a sort of promotional page for events, retreats, and trainings where teachers could take out advertising to showcase their offerings. And, now when I've sort of refined the vision of sorts a bit more, the 3 words that always came to mind for me was to celebrate, to showcase, and to support. So the first one being
those 3 words, okay? Celebrate, showcase, and support.
So they were always I put them on the newsletter and the website, because I think that's really what the whole website encompasses. So firstly, to celebrate, to say, look, here's our community, how incredible and how diverse are these offerings, how amazing are our teachers. I have done a lot of classes with overseas instructors and I love them, but I think we have incredible yoga teachers.
I'm so glad you've just said that.
So many great teachers here, and I think sometimes, we're such a small little country in this great big world, but our qualifications and, a lot of the yoga teachers that host trainings here are incredibly qualified. And so I think we're really lucky in that way, and to showcase them and to say, hey, look, guys, we're actually really great. I think that's the first thing, which is really quite beautiful. So celebration is firstly number 1, and then showcase. So that's just to say, yeah, this is what we got on offer. And I think also in the word showcase for me is for teachers to put up a directory and say, let me tell you about me. This is what I offer. This is what I do. This is what I'm passionate about. So that, you can speak directly to people who are looking for something, I guess. And then lastly, to support.
I'm just going to interject with like showcase. And I think that's so important, because often as like yoga teachers, we pull ourselves out of the way. We don't bring ourselves into the light and say, kind of like, this is the flag that I'm holding. I'm all for, drinking hot water, or whatever you stand for with your yoga practice. We kind of like often just shy away. I find that like a lot of yoga teachers do that. And I think at some point we actually need to like literally put our like flag in the ground, stand up straight and say, hey, this is what I stand for. This is what I can help you with. And so I love that word showcase, because I think it's so much more kind of encompassing. It doesn't have any of that egotistical aspect to it. It's really like, yeah, this is the life that I have. If you need help with this, come to me, and you know, we can guide, we can work with you through what it is you're going. All right, sorry. Okay, I had to throw that in.
I 100% agree, because I've had this discussion with a lot of teachers, and also on yoga teacher trainings I've worked at, where we spoke about sort of finding your role or your purpose or your unique offerings as a teacher. It's always the one thing I always say to students, or I guess students becoming teachers, I'd always ask them, what makes you unique? And they would say, oh, I don't know. And I say, no, but there's something there. And sometimes it takes time to find it, but to find your unique quality as a teacher that, I don't want to say sets you apart from others, because it's not about a competition of sorts. It's more about your unique offering and showcasing that in a way. Like you say, it's not about putting myself out there and trying to say, hey, look at me. It's about, in a way, kind of stepping out of your comfort zone and saying, you know, this is what I offer, and this is what I'm really good at, which I think we struggle to say a lot, is to say, I'm really good at this, and that's why I do that. And I think that's the first step that a lot of teachers need to make when you are wanting to connect with students more on a digital platform. I think a lot of teachers are really good at standing up in front of a class or in front of your students and teaching, because that's what we're trained to do. But as soon as it becomes media or marketing or photos and videos, I think maybe the last 3 years we've overcome that a lot, because we had to just jump behind the screen.
We've been pushed into that.
But it's a comfort zone that I think has sort of pushed us in the right direction, because it's sort of allowed us to feel more confident in being on an online space. So that's really, I think, important for teachers. And it's one of the tips I'll share later, just in discovering your uniqueness and what you want to share with the world and with the yoga community. And I think that takes time to really dig deep and find out what lights your fire the most. But I think that's what's exciting, is everything I list on Yoga South Africa, nothing is the same, nothing's similar. There's always something completely different, which it's exciting, because it doesn't feel as though we have tons of the same things on offer. There's a lot of variety, which I think is important for new yoga practitioners to see, to understand what's the difference between this style and that style, or practicing in this space and that space. So there is uniqueness in that, which is nice to showcase that. Lovely. And then the last thing was support, which I think is in the same, it's both for someone, I get a lot of emails on Yoga South Africa where someone says, hi, can you explain to me this? Or I see there's a training, you know, what is the difference between these two accreditations? Or I'm looking for a teacher that, you know, how do I get in touch with someone to teach private yoga? So just things where you go, I don't know who do I ask about that? So it's been awesome to just fill that gap for those who did have questions, and then to also just provide that little support network from student to teacher, or from retreat attendee to retreat host, whatever it may be, but just to fill those gaps, I guess. Awesome. Great, I think of myself sometimes like a switchboard, just people passing through and sending them in the right direction.
Yeah, I think we both probably very high, very got in the personality test, like with networking. We're probably, you know, very, very high in, you know, with like, okay, connect this person with that person, And I love that kind of stuff. I get a lot of emails in my inbox as well with regards to, do you know, who could I, what is this? So no, it is lovely to always be able to guide people in a good direction. Cool. All right. So you were saying, for yoga teachers watching, because I know that a lot of our yoga teachers are planning to become yoga teachers who do watch these little videos. You've got 5 tips for yoga teachers with regards to how they can improve their marketing, something in that line?
So I think, you know, summarizing something like marketing into 5 tips is it's very tricky. So I wish I could have written like 10 or 15, but it's very daunting and it's very overwhelming. Like I've always said to new teachers before, is that, you know, you come in and you're a yoga teacher, you've trained to be a yoga teacher, and now you got to do marketing, and you're accountant, and you're doing invoices, and there's a lot that needs to happen. And so if it feels intimidating, then I want to say to those listening that that's fine. That's a very normal response, and it's not very instinctive or intuitive for everyone to be very good at marketing or something, so
or
it's
enjoy
sometimes
it, want to do
or
it.
enjoy it.
But
100%.
it's kind of like everyone's their own little entrepreneur. It's like you're not just going into a business and you're having a role as like, a CFO or, like a marketing exec or, a doctor or something. Like you're doing all the roles from finance, to PR, to back end, to the marketing.
And it's a lot of time. And that's why for those who have maybe tried it, fell off the bandwagon, it's very hard to be consistent, especially when it's something that requires a lot of hard work and time, which it does. So those are all of the things I take into account, and I'll share those will come into account a little bit later. But the first one, or the first tip I have is to always be really, not to always, but to take a time, whether that means to write in a journal or to draw a mind map or a vision board, but to be really, really clear on your offerings and your uniqueness. So you said earlier, like, how can I be of service to others? And sometimes that comes down to showing a few words. So I want to, create classes that are a safe, nurturing space. And some teachers might want to have a fun, adventurous class. So to really be clear on what you want to offer in terms of maybe it's events or workshops, retreats or trainings, but then also, what do you want your students to feel when they come to your class? Because I think that's where you start stepping into the student's shoes of what are they going to experience in your offerings that is going to help you sort of be really clear on your uniqueness. And I think a lot of marketing professionals will say to find your niche, and it's often thrown around then. As yoga teachers, I think we're very scared to box ourselves into only doing one thing because we don't want to limit ourselves. Mm-hmm. But I've also found that creating a niche is also really beneficial because it means people who are looking for that will find you. Yeah. So for myself as a teacher, I love yin and chair yoga. And those were just one things. And I thought, but I also want to teach this and that and this. But that's where my energy goes to most of the time. And so the more that I feed that I'm most passionate about, the more that can grow. So to be really, really clear on where you want to teach and what you want to teach.
And I love what you're saying there is kind of like in the sense, like, where is your passion? Because often we like, people will come to us and they'll be like, just throwing it out, like back pain. Like maybe I want to, maybe you should be doing yoga for back pain, but maybe your passion has got nothing to do with that. And maybe your passion is like, working with the chakras energetically, or whatever the story is. And to kind of really allow yourself to, okay, maybe you need to spend like 20% of your energy and time doing the back pain and maybe 80% towards like, the passion of what really lights you up. So I love what you say with regards to that.
Yeah, and honing in on that. And it took me like a couple of years of teaching to know what that was. So if someone's watching this and go, I have no idea, that's fine. I think that's a normal part of the process. But be on a quest to find what that is, because you only learn what you love the most when you try lots of stuff. So I hosted a retreat and I said, nope, retreats are not for me. So, and some people do it and they go, this is where I thrive. So you have to try everything to find what works for you, essentially.
I love that as well, as we're and also kind of like realizing that we don't get just boxed in when we have done that actually with time we can evolve and we can move into a different area, but that it's helpful for right now, where are you right now, to give yourself a little bit of a label, but realizing that it's not the label for the rest of your life. Like you can change it.
And you can totally change your mind every couple of years. And that's fine. I mean, we are so complex. We change our minds all the time. We change our passions. So it's never written in stone because you make up the rules. Yeah, you can do whatever you want. Yeah. So, but I find that clarity really helps. And I think number one leads into 2 and 3. And number 2 is, who do you see, once you have that experience, who do you see benefiting from your classes, or who's your sort of ideal audience? And I think as yoga teachers, of course, we want our yoga offerings to be as accessible to everyone, but there's always sometimes a unique audience that gravitates to you the most. So for myself as a teacher now, I have put together online courses. So my target audience is teachers. So although students might come in and do it, it's a course created for teachers. So it can be, for example, if you are passionate about kids yoga, your target audience becomes teachers and teachers, schools, and parents. And if you are wanting to teach at a hot studio, then you're targeting certain individuals who gravitate towards a vigorous hot practice. Mm-hmm. So understanding who your audience is, and then leading into question 3 is how do I then reach those people? Because I think what I've seen, unfortunately, I have, as someone who does digital marketing, I have a love-hate relationship with social media, mostly hate. It's not my favorite, but we can't really avoid it. Maybe you're lucky and you can, but if your target audience is not using social media, you don't have to worry about Instagram. It's not important. And a good example I have of this is, for a long time, I was teaching yoga to mostly older practitioners who were pensioners. And so I wasn't posting about those classes on Instagram because they weren't using Instagram. But I created a WhatsApp group, and I put notices up in the community halls and all of the local spots. And so the way that you reach people are different according to different audiences. So
I love a lot what you're saying. Actually, I love everything that you say, but it's so true. Like, often I find kind of like, also with our teacher training course, I help to navigate the business module there, and people saying, okay, well, like, how do I create a Facebook page, and how do I do an Instagram this and da da da? And I'm like, well, whoa. Like you're saying, who's your target market, or where are your people and where are they gravitating to? And again, back to like, do you actually enjoy it? Because if you're not on Instagram and you don't like it, it's going to be a schlep for you, and it's not going to be enjoyable. And then kind of like the energy you're putting into it is not going to be truthful. Kind of like a little backstory, when my mom and me, because we trained together and we opened our studio together, this was back in 2003, before kind of like the event of Facebook and anything like that. I mean, we had like flyers, and we went and did flyer drop-offs in letterboxes, back in the days. And we would walk around every day, do a couple of 100 flyers, and that's the way people came to us. But again, with time, as things evolve, we definitely have not been doing that in the last 10 years, because that's not what people want. They get frustrated if there's stuff in their letterbox. I don't even think people look in their letterbox anymore.
I know.
But it has to be relevant to your target market. I love that tip that you share. Thank you.
Yeah. And that's sometimes, maybe that takes off a little bit of pressure, because sometimes teachers feel, I need a website and a newsletter and Instagram and Facebook, and that is just, it's so much to take on. And that's why I think the Yoga South Africa directory for teachers and studios and retreat venues, that's free now. So you don't have to go and invest in a website as yet if you don't want to. If you want to create a directory listing there and put all your offerings up, then that's just a place where you can put all the information on one page. So that's a useful tip for teachers. And then whatever sort of media you want to use, it can also still be flyers. I guess if you're at a school, you can hand out flyers to all the kids that, to send home with parents. So sometimes it's useful, but then also sometimes it's tricky. So to just understand what is the best way I'm going to reach that people. Sometimes if you're new in an area and you have a new studio, it's helpful to do things like open days or a free class to get people in the door, and then to get their emails or start a WhatsApp group. So to just open yourself up to connecting with individuals, and then maybe even asking them, how do you prefer to get contacted? Because people will tell you, and then that steers you in the right direction for sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Those tips. All right. What
my
else?
last two. Okay, so my tip number 4, and I think this has been a lesson in the last 3 years, is to don't fret about the numbers when it comes to marketing, because it's.
I need to hear this. I'm just saying, I need to hear this. Speak to me.
I think everyone, and this is where, we can get despondent, especially as yoga teachers, where we put so much time into creating nice pictures and videos for Instagram, and we put it out there, and then like, where is it? What's happening? And I think this is just to say to those who get despondent with social media, is that there's a lot that's changing in social media at the moment. So, when Facebook was the it thing, and then that dropped and Instagram came up, and now that's dropping, and, they change all the time. And with social media, we aren't in control of what social media does. So social media can all disappear tomorrow, which is very unlikely. So with the social media platforms, the more that you can generate sort of traction to your own content, be it a website, a newsletter, a WhatsApp group, whatever it may be, that sort of content that you have control over. So I always say to teachers, if you are offering classes, to get an email database going, because that's an audience that you can contact whenever you want. They're not going anywhere unless they decide to unsubscribe, which is totally fine. But, social media is unpredictable, and we can get very wrapped up in, the number of followers we have or the likes we have. But someone can have 10 likes and 10 bookings, and someone can have 1 million likes and no bookings. And so it's not directly proportional. So that's number 4, is to not, and I want to say, to not fret too much about social media at all. Don't let it control your life.
And it kind of like brings me to that idea of kind of like, it's your reputation that you're putting out there. Like, who are you? Are you being truthful to that, and not kind of like giving yourself a bad name or anything in that realm? Because pretty much when there's something out there on social media, it's really difficult to get it off the internet. And yeah, so kind of like that idea of your reputation, kind of like when you're speaking, like popped up. And also not to undervalue the importance of word of mouth, and
100%. Word of mouth, I guess that falls in how do we reach how do you reach your target audience? Because whoever comes to your classes, their friends and their like-minded individuals are, if they fall within that same space, that's also your biggest advocate. So your students and whoever's coming to your classes, whether it's teachers, whatever audience you're working with, they are your biggest word of mouth followers or spreaders, if that makes sense. So, even asking, I think there was a couple of times where I would run trainings, or I've actually attended trainings where someone said, hey, look, I'm running my next one coming up. If you know anyone else who may be keen, please share this with them. And I always go, oh, that person might be keen, or that person. So word of mouth, I think, is super powerful, especially now, because with a lot happening in the yoga world, having someone who has gone through that experience or has attended a training or a retreat gives some personal insights. And I think that's 100% so much more valuable.
Cool.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And then the last one I wrote, and this is mostly for new teachers, but I wrote start small. And I think this is something that I did after I became a teacher, and I'm really glad I did it this way. Is I started teaching in my house to 3 of my friends, and that was my first way of teaching. And I see a lot of new teachers, especially on the trainings I've taught at, they jump, some dive in, and they are so confident, and I love that for them. But not everyone is confident straight off the bat. And so I found the greatest benefit was in starting small with my own classes. I did a lot of outdoor, and they started off small and they slowly grew because everyone brought a friend and their cousin. And I found that's where it gave me opportunity to build my confidence. And to this day, I love small classes. So I prefer a class that's maybe under 6 people. That's my favorite. So starting small, it doesn't mean it's less significant than having 100 people in your class. So I think it's wonderful. And if there's an opportunity for you to teach semi-private classes, or, at a small base studio, or even at your house, I think that's one of the best things you can do when you start teaching.
Yeah, I love that tip, Tarryn. I absolutely love that, because I've seen it enough in the yoga world over the years where people have done a teacher training, they've loved it, they're like, I want this to be my life, because they love the yoga. They don't realize that they're actually an entrepreneur, and they're going to have to do all the jobs that they're currently doing in their business and more. And then they kind of like quit their day job, and they think they're going to go into teaching full time and higher space and then realize just how much freaking work it is. And then after half a year, everything closes down because they just can't get the numbers to make the numbers work. And I love what you're saying with like, start small, build your network, build the group, get a following going, and then from there, see how, and what it leads you to.
Yeah. And that's actually, like, I wrote on here, like, I think it's more what I see on Yoga South Africa. I think the importance of doing market research. And, we're not doing market research like big corporates. You don't have to do a 20-page document on it, but just to understand, and what you said, building your network, or like a warm audience of, people who regularly attend your classes, who understand who you are and what you offer as a teacher. That sort of network is so important when you take on a new venture. And I've seen it with teachers who have maybe never hosted a retreat before, and then they host their first retreat and they don't get the booking that they want. And it's because it takes time to build it up. And so patience is, to not get despondent, but also to be patient in it and understand that you need to put things out there to get going, but it's also going to help you sort of find the right path there eventually, hopefully.
So true. Please run through those 5 tips quickly for everyone again.
So the first one is just to be really clear on your offerings. 2, to understand your ideal audience. 3, how do you reach that audience? Number 4 is to not worry about the numbers. And 5, to start small.
Brilliant.
And then marketing done. Yes. 101, all sorted.
Marketing 101, done, dusted in all of like 25, 30 minutes. Tarryn, we could go on and on and on, and I'd still love to hear like the back end of YogaSA and all of that. But I think we'll have to put that like in another interview if you're happy to come back again in the future.
Of course, yeah.
Like, before we end off, like, what are you excited about for this year? Where is YogaSA going this year?
So someone asked me this last week and I said, I don't know, I'll just see where it takes me. So 2023 is the year of just seeing how it goes. But I think this year I'm really excited, like I said to you just before we hit record, is to see the yoga world really or yoga in South Africa starting to boom a bit after the last 3 years. I think we saw a little dip in the number of offerings available, and I'm really seeing that on the rise once again. And that makes me really excited for yoga teachers to be able to do that. So I'm excited to just see essentially how the yoga world grows, and I'm always blown away by the incredible offerings that teachers are putting together. So I guess I'm just looking forward to seeing what everyone else is doing, which I love.
Amazing. So I just want to say like a massive big thank you for taking on like this big project of putting a structure in place for yoga teachers, who just starting out, who've been teaching for ages, have beautiful parts of their personality and knowledge and skills from kind of like maybe what they did before getting into yoga that they're now combining with the yoga, because I see so much combo happening in the yoga world. And the yoga and dance, the yoga and art, it's so beautiful how people are intertwining what they're doing. Again, it brings a sense of like uniqueness out in them, and I love to see how things evolve and grow, because it really lights people up, and I think that's important, and not to be scared of that. So
thank you so much for also, allowing us, by us, I mean me, to be here, to just talk about it, because I think I can tell that our passions align, and it's really excited to just, speak to teachers who have the same vision. So I think we're on that route and we're heading in the right direction. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. It's been divine, and definitely need to get you back soon.
Yes.
Lots of love from me to all of you guys out there. Thanks so much for listening in, and we'll see everyone again next week.
Thank you.